Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 158. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the great state of Pennsylvania, we have a very, very, very special guest who I've been trying to get on the show for a while now. We're finally here, Cait Moser. Cait, what's up?
Not much.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I don't even know where to begin, but I feel like it probably makes sense to just explain how I know you. And it's a bit of a longer story that I think you probably know, but I'll just go back to the beginning. So, for context, I went to college at Bucknell University. That's where I started. And I met this kid named Danny Gewirtz. And Danny and I were both on the football team for a year. And we kind of stayed in touch after college, reconnected. I was getting married. Danny was going to shoot my wedding. The pandemic happened. We had to postpone that celebration for a year. Danny moved to Hawaii. Danny connected me with Luke O'Brien. Luke O'Brien and I became like best friends at the wedding. And Luke is the one who eventually led me to meet you and so many others at Lululemon. And Luke and Danny were both podcast guests, both amazing humans. But I've known you ever since. And I guess for timeline, that was probably 2021 or two.
Yeah, I think probably 2021. And it feels like such a short story, but that's like so long ago.
I know time flies when you're having fun, as they say.
I
And
think it was Memorial Day weekend because I remember meeting you in the store and like I got you in like the short shorts. I take credit for that. And then I went and like ran and it was freezing and cold and horrible, but it was still like COVID because I think we had masks on and everything, but it feels like yesterday, but it was so long ago.
so I want to get to your introduction, but before we get there, you are the one who put me in short shorts for one of the first times. And I will say that experience was so weird for me because Luke invited me to the store. He was like, "Hey, come to the store, meet these people." And I didn't know what to expect. So I drove to the King of Prussia Mall, parked on the complete opposite side, the wrong part of the mall, walked like a mile through the mall, it felt like, to get to
And
the
you still do that.
I still do that. I haven't figured it out yet. Got to the store, met you, and you were like, "Yeah, go pick out, like, try on some clothes." And I was like, in my head, I was like, "What's happening right now?" So I tried on some clothes, and I think you probably handed me a pair of short shorts, and I came out, and you were like, "Yeah, they look great," and you were like, "Give them to me." And then I walked out of the store with like a bunch of clothes for free, and I was like, "What is happening right now?"
It's
So
literally the best part of my job.
yeah. And so before we get into everything that comes after, why don't we rewind and why don't you introduce yourself to the people listening?
Okay. This always feels so hard. So I'm from PA. I've lived here my whole life. Grew up in Schwanksville, which I'm currently in Phoenixville now. Schwanksville is only like 20, 25 minutes away. It's not that far.
That sounds made up, by the way.
I know, but it's like it's here. It's a real place. I grew up there. I have three older sisters. I am the baby. There's quite an age gap between me and my third. I was the unexpected blessing, as my mom calls it. And I, what else? Yeah, what else do people usually say now? I grew up there, went to college. I went to LaSalle. Um, I took a few years off in between like community college and then going back to LaSalle to see like what I wanted to do with life. Went back, got my undergrad and my master's in history. I now work at Lululemon. I have been there for 7 years. It'll be 8 in August. And through that, I've met like so many amazing people. I think I'm a completely different person than when I started there, but that's a different plug. And yeah, I run, I read a lot of books. I have a dog, I'm married. I love good food, always like trying new fun beers. And yeah, I feel like that's like a little brief thing
So
about.
I want to start with what you studied in college. Uh, I've had so many conversations with so many people who study one thing in college and then don't use that in a direct way in what they do now. It just seems like that's very common. And history is one of those things that I, back when I was in college, would have said to somebody, "What are you going to do with a history degree?" What did you think you were going to do with a history degree?
So what I wanted to do and still I think like dream is I want to teach. Like I would like to be a professor. I want to be a professor. I don't have any interest in like children or even high schoolers, especially these days. It is just the wild west out there. But at least like in college, people generally take your class because they have interest in it.
Mm.
And that's always been my dream. Um, while I'm not using it like daily, I still like we'll talk about this, but I turn to writing
Mm.
when to like understand and like process how I'm feeling. And I know that compared to when I started school, I'm such a much better writer now, but it's how I just like process and understand things. So I still use it in a way. I might not be talking about things that happened in the past, but it's like a skill that I've acquired and I still turn to daily.
That's beautiful, for a lot of reasons. And I have a couple different thoughts, but I'm going to ask a question. And now you don't know what this question is going to be. So take some time to process if you need. What's one lesson that you've learned through your studies in history that you think is very applicable to anyone listening or even your own life too?
Mm. Ooh.
And while you think, I have one here that I can share, and it's a concept I've shared on the podcast already. I, you can fact check me on the historical accuracy of some of this. It might be a myth, but I think it's a cool story. So I believe it was the early 1500s. Hernan Cortez uh, took a group of explorers, I guess, or his people to the shore of the Aztec Empire, wherever that was. And there was this treasure that a lot of people had come before and tried to take from the Aztecs, and nobody had been successful. And the story goes that when they docked their boats on the beach, Hernan Cortez told his men to burn the boats. And I guess in some confusion, there were some questions. People were wondering why. And he said, either we're leaving in their boats or we're not leaving at all. And again, this can be complete fiction, but the idea of burn the boats, I think, is really applicable to a lot of our lives because in order to come out successful, sometimes we need to take away the backup plan. We need to remove the safety net. We have to force ourselves into a position where we need to succeed. And as it goes, they did take the treasure that so many others before them failed to take, because they burned the boats. So it's about full commitment. So that's my little historical lesson. Whether it's accurate or not, who knows? Um,
I love that. I've never heard that. I will have to look that up for sure, but I love that. And I do have my answer. So my area that I studied is World War II and the Holocaust and whatnot, but my favorite story and lesson from it is D-Day,
mm,
June 6th, 1944. We're getting ready for this invasion, and so much goes into it. So much could go wrong. And Eisenhower wrote two letters. He wrote one saying, like, if this invasion goes wrong, like, it wasn't the men, it was me. Like, I take full responsibility. Please don't blame anyone else but me.
mm,
And then he wrote or I think he maybe just wrote that one. Maybe there weren't two, but he wrote a letter like taking full responsibility for it. And we know D-Day went, I'm going to say it went well, despite the amount of people, that died from it, but it went well. It was a success, and we won World War II. That letter never had to be like opened or issued or like sent out because it was a success. But I love that's a true leader.
Mm.
Like, hey, it's me. I take responsibility for this, no one else. This was my decision and it's all on me. And I just love that so much. And I think I use that in my like daily life, like I'll take ownership for stuff, whether it's going right or wrong, like it's up to you. So that is one of my favorite stories and lessons.
Such a great lesson. I I believe you that yours is accurate. Again, mine might not be, but both great lessons. From there, let's dive into a little bit more of your life. And I'll preface this with I know a bit about you. When we first met, I know that you were having trouble running, which is something that means a whole lot to you. And I'm imagining that will come up in our conversation. But before I give your answer for you, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
So I knew that you would ask me this. And it's funny because I have two answers, like pre 2023
Mhm.
and even 2024 right now. I would say, and I told Mike this at the first Project Endure event, like he was making a video, and my answer then was my back. Going through my back injury was the hardest thing physically that I've ever had to go through. That who wants to choose that? Okay. Now, though, you asked me this, and it is my mom dying. She died in October last year, 2023. And that is the hardest thing. It's worse than my back that I've gone through. And yeah, so it's a mix of both. And I know we'll tie both into the conversation, but it is just, it's hard.
Yeah. I guess let's start with your mom. And it's interesting. One, I didn't know that, and I'm sorry. Um, Two, I texted you on Sunday night in a panic because I had a wake to go to today that I came back from a few hours ago. And when you're in that space where a person that you care about that was once alive and well is there in front of you and they're not there anymore, you know, um, that's hard. And I would love to hear more about your mom, learn about her, and also hear about why that was so hard and how you've gotten through it.
Yeah. I go like grief is just so wild and unpredictable. And some days
Mm.
it's easy to talk about and you love, like I still want to talk about my mom and tell all the stories about her because that's my mom. I love her and miss her so much. And then other days it's just like it hurts too much to talk about.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know what day it is today, so we'll find out. But um, my mom is my best friend. I think by me being the baby and born, like I felt like an only child growing up
Mm.
because my three sisters were in high school and going off to college. So it was just me and my parents. And we had our like fights and whatnot that you go through, but she is the person that like I told everything first. I mean, a few things I skipped out on, but she, like she was my best friend. Like we would have lunch together all the time. We would go to the beach. We would go on these day trips. Everything. Like she's just my person.
Yeah.
And, like the one person that you can trust and depend on no matter what. And that was her. So when I was 6, she actually had breast cancer. Um, and I don't remember much of it, I guess, fortunately. But she had it when I was 6. And then she was in remission. She fought, she survived. She told me the one time, like, um, she didn't want to leave me in the world that young without a mom, and that just like solidified just our bond. And because she knew like my older sisters were fine, but she couldn't leave me just with my dad. I guess. And my dad's amazing, but I probably would have turned out a little bit differently being raised just by him. So that just like says so much about her and her resilience and perseverance, which I know is instilled in me from her. Um, and things were great. And then 2021, was it 2021? Yeah, she had a lot of health issues over the summer, and her focus was on like a few other things in the health, and we were ignoring like the one big thing that ended up being cancer, but we had no clue that that's what it was because she was focusing on a bunch of other things. And eventually she got her diagnosis that it was triple negative breast cancer and it had metastasized um, in her body, and triple negative is not curable. She's also 71 at this point, like, so she's older. Um, and she still decided to, try all the treatments possible just to prolong and like have however many extra years she got. And she tried everything, like chemo, radiation, every type of chemo. And it was rough because I mean, like COVID's still happening. So she's higher risk. We couldn't do a lot of the stuff that we were used to doing because she didn't feel good majority of the time. Um, and then 2023, like everything pretty much just started to go downhill, but also it was still just back and forth every month. We were like, is this it? Like, is this going to be it? And it's just the exhaustion of going through that in a way is like when she passed away in October, as devastating and sad as I was, I also still felt this like huge relief in a way because it was over. And you like, it's funny. There's certain things that like trigger, like there's nothing you can say to make someone feel better. And there's certain things that like kind of like they're in a better place. Yes, I know that, but that doesn't make me feel any better, like they're not here with me. How can they be in a better place?
Mm.
Like we're not together. So in a way, I felt relief. And I had been grieving for like those 2 years before because I was grieving the life that we didn't have anymore, that we couldn't do all these things, that like she couldn't really leave the house. She couldn't come to my races. She couldn't come because it was just so much. But once that settled, I have like the normal grief now where I'm just sad and I just like miss her so much. And it just sucks. Like it's so hard. Um, I've gotten really close with my dad from it, closer than like we were. And that's beautiful and I love it, but it's just like still not the same. There's things that you really want to tell your mom, or there's stuff that like she just knew. I feel like I have a list of questions that I like never got to ask her. And I'm like, who can I ask? Like, yeah, I'm surrounded by other moms, but like I want my mom's answer. So it's just it truly is like up and down and just rough.
Yeah. I once heard the phrase that grief is just love with nowhere to go. And yeah, it's hard. And I know people have different ways of dealing with grief and processing loss and staying connected and feeling close to people who are no longer here. And I ask this question sometimes in the podcast when people talk about loss. And if it's one that gets you too emotional, you don't have to answer it. But if you could just say anything to your mom right now or ask anything, what would it be?
I don't have any questions for her right now. So I think I would just like, and it was actually one of the last things I said to her was just like, I would not have picked anyone else to be my mom. Like, I would not have picked anyone else. You were the absolute best. I love you. And like, I will miss you every day for the rest of my life. And along with that quote, I read this quote there's two quotes, but the one that I really love is I will endure a lifetime of missing you for the privilege of loving you.
Wow.
And I think it's beautiful and it is an honor. Like some people lose people in their lives and it's like we didn't talk. It is an honor to love someone so much that like it hurts this much without them. And I try to remind myself that, not in this like toxic positivity way of just like pushing through it, but like it's an honor and it hurts and it's an honor, you know?
That's so beautiful. How does that inform the way that you show up on the days where it really does hurt and where maybe it's hard to go on?
Well, it's a mix. The other quote that I saw was like grief is an endurance like no other. And I agree and believe that and it's so applicable to running and like what I love about running and is how hard it is and that some days are really easy and it feels like you could go forever. And then other days it's like why is this 3 mile route that I do all the time like so hard? And that's why we love it. And that's why we keep doing it. And I think that's this like what I said earlier with grief, you know, some days really easy. We can talk and laugh and tell stories of our loved ones without crying. And then other days it's like, man, I just saw this one thing and I'm in tears now. Like I was like crying at lunch the one day because my husband and I were talking about Thanksgiving and my mom always made the gravy. I don't know why. Like of all the things, she helped make the gravy. And he said, oh, who's going to make the gravy this year? And I just like burst into tears in public. And I was like, is this is a thing that's going to happen now? And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, but yes. I was like, okay. So, yeah, did I answer that? It's
You
yeah,
did. You did really well. We'll tie this into running here in a minute, but it's so true, right? Like, you know, tomorrow morning when I get up and run, it'll be day 750 of the daily run streak that I've been doing, which I'm going to say on record, I don't think should be considered impressive because of the running. It's not impressive because of the running. It's impressive if at all because I haven't missed a day, but the running itself is like it's a mile. So for me, it's not much. But what I'll say is I get up some days and I feel like I'm floating, right? Like you just get out there and it's just, woo, this is great. And then most days, or at least half, it's like, oh, this is terrible. My legs are heavy. This doesn't feel good. I don't want to be here. And it's hard to predict which day is going to be which. You don't really know until you start running.
yeah. I have two things for that. I feel that because I just did the SRT 50K, which
Mhm.
I'm like, it was beautiful. It went so well. I only truly was like hating life the last 3 miles, which is quite an amazing feat on its own. But training for it, you know, you have back to back like long runs and like a long run and then like a middle distance run. And every time I would wake up after the long run and my like first 2 miles moving, my legs were like, this is horrible. And it just felt it physically felt like the feeling of grief, you know, and like moving through it. And eventually they would warm up and then I would feel good. And then I still like go back to when I couldn't walk or with my back. And I just remind myself, like, hey, this is such a gift. I cried and like would have done anything for days like this. And I have them now.
Mm.
And I'm so thankful for it. So there's a mix of like with my grief, sometimes like running it is my go-to, but some days like it's just not enough or some days it's too much and I just like I can't, you know, and I just kind of listen to my body and you know like okay, today's not the day.
Mm.
Maybe today I just need to like curl up in a ball and as sad as it sounds like just exist and be sad and like maybe cry. I'm really good at listening to my body that way. And then there's other days where I'm like, hey, I need to run and nothing's going to stop me. And I've just been like graceful with that and like nice and compassionate to myself. You know, if today's not the day, it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day because that's the same thing with grief. You don't know what you're going to get each day when you wake up.
Is it fair to make the connection that the grieving process has helped you become more graceful and compassionate toward yourself?
Yes, it's like the one thing that while I turn to writing to understand it, it's also the one thing that is just like unpredictable. You don't know, and there's no solution to it. There's no like, hey, this is how we fix it. You literally just have to feel everything. And generally, I don't like to do that. Um, I have a therapist and we talk, but it's sometimes like pulling teeth to get things out of me. I'm aware of it, but it's still just like this process has taught me to just feel everything, the anger, the sadness, the happiness. You can't keep it in because that's when it gets like worse. So just let it out and be okay that like one thing that you never thought would trigger you is going to trigger you and you're going to cry. Like this is so random, but the day that I only know this because of the news, that it came out about Kate Middleton having cancer. I was sobbing in my store. It was like 3 o'clock and I was crying. And my boss is like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Kate Middleton has cancer." And I didn't think it would make me cry, but I'm crying. And I was like, And so just like, I laugh at it now because I was like, wow, I didn't think that would hit me like that. But you just can't, you don't know. You don't expect it.
So I have two thoughts. One takes us away from running, one takes us toward running. So let me go with the one that takes us away from running first, and then we'll bring it back. I had a close friend, Mike Zacco, on the podcast, and Mike is such a passionate person. And him and I recorded in person, one of the few episodes I've recorded in person. And he talked a lot about the human experience and what the human experience means to him. And I've been reflecting a lot on this as of late, but I don't think the reason we're here or the human experience is about being happy all the time. I don't think life is just about being or feeling positive all the time. I think life is about experiencing it all, the happiness, the sadness, the joy, the grief, the gain, the loss, all of it. And it's romantic in a way to say that or to think it and look at life as this canvas and all these different emotions are splattered, and it could be beautiful, but it's painful at times and it's unpredictable, like you said. And I think embracing what we feel, feeling what we feel, but not letting that ultimately dictate how we move through life is a really important skill. So being able to feel what you need to feel and then do what you need to do and separating those two things out on a big picture scale is a really important thing. And I think sometimes, not all the time, it's easy to get bogged down in what we feel and let that stop us from doing what we want to do. Because there's a difference between on a small scale, any given day, crying it out, feeling sad, letting those things happen, but then getting up the next day and not letting those things stop us from moving forward. That's a really hard skill. So I'll pause there for a sec if you have any thoughts.
I have treated every single day as just like a blank slate, like it's a new day.
Mm.
I think in the past, before my mom, one, I would, get bent out of shape over stuff so easily, and it would, carry across a few days. And now, one, life is too short,
Mm.
you know, um, and I just focus on like what truly matters, like will it matter in like 5 years? That quote of like, but will it matter? Yes or no? And even if it's a yes, like, will it actually matter? Like, let's be real. And I just truly start each day as like, it's a blank slate. So, hey, I was really sad yesterday. It's a new day. Maybe like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll be like at an 8 today and not a 10, but it's a new day. But what I love about what you were saying with like the peaks and valleys, not to take it back to running, but like that is running. That's like, especially trail running, like it's not worth the run isn't worth it if you're just going flat. You go up the hill, you go up this like really hard hill, you're up at the top, you see your view, and it wouldn't feel as good or be as beautiful if it didn't take so hard and so long to get up it. Um, and that's how I feel. That's how it, yeah,
Yeah.
like that's it. That's a beautiful, that's why we love running, you know?
So this is perfect to transition into my other thought, which is actually your thought that you wrote as a caption on Instagram that I'm going to read because it is so beautiful. So you titled this a love letter to the SRT, the Schuylkill River Trail, for those unfamiliar. And you said, I simply can't begin to calculate the amount of hours I've spent on you. When I wasn't running, I was walking. And when I wasn't walking, I was riding my bike. You have pieces and moments of me from the past sprinkled throughout the trail: blood, sweat, and tears, lots of tears. And still, what I've given to you of my physical self, you've given me so much more: moments of peace, clarity, and quiet. You've taught me resilience and grit to get back up and keep going no matter how hard it gets in life and running. What a gift all of this is. Thank you. I just love that, Cait. That is so beautiful. Tell me more about that.
It's so weird to hear myself back to me. Um, thank you. I I know I like finished Saturday and I was so excited going into it. Like I got a little bit nervous right when we pulled up, but then it just like went away. Like I know the SRT, at least parts of it, like the back of my hand. It is true. I don't know how many hours I've spent on it. I live 2 miles from one of the trailheads in Phoenixville. So I'm on it all the time. And it just like someone asked me, they're like, have you done this race before? And I said no. And they're like, oh, I was gonna follow you. I'm like, oh, it's so easy. Like, trust me, you'll be fine. Um, and it was just so special to do. Like I've dreamed and wanted to run that race since 2018. We know in 2019, my back, 2020, no, 2020, like I didn't get to do it until 2024. And it was just so special to be running on a trail that has like turned me and like made me into who I am. And just like I wrote everything that I've left on it. I have fallen, there's blood, there's sweat, there's tears. And it's just like still there. Like it's a place that I go for my brain to just be quiet. And it's been like who would have thought a trail could offer so much comfort, but that's where I turn to for my like me time. And it's just turned me into like who I am over the years. And I'm not the same runner that I was back in 2016 when I first stepped foot on it compared to who I am now. I love myself now. I'm a lot better and just a better human than I was back then. But the transformation I've gone through while that trail has stayed the same is just amazing. And it just like makes me so happy to think about.
This is an audio podcast, so people can't see the huge smile you have on your face when you were talking about all of that. But yeah, I can feel it. Right. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast understand what you're talking about. Right. The work we do changes who we are. And for you, the SRT was where a lot of that work happened. It's where a lot of blood, sweat, and tears are left and will remain. And a part of you is there, and you've taken a part of that trail with you everywhere you go now, and that's really special. When we first met, you were not running because of your back, and I was still in physical therapist mode. I was getting ready. I was preparing to leave my full time job to start Project Endure. And funny enough, actually, the day Luke had mentioned he wanted to connect me with you was the same day Luke had told me that I should pursue what I want. We went running in Valley Forge, and he just told me that entrepreneurship was one of the hardest things he'd ever done to that point in his life and one of the most rewarding. And so at the time, I didn't realize it, but that was a big catalyst for me to go down this path. And I'm so grateful for that. But where I'm going with this was I was still in physical therapist mode. I met you, your back was bothering you, you weren't running. And I didn't know how to find the words because it can be delicate at times. I just wanted to tell you that there was hope, right? That you could move, you could walk, you could bike, you'll figure a way to get to where you want to go. And I know it's hard to see that when you're in pain, when you're still on that side of things. If you could go back to yourself in 2020, 2019, 2021, that time frame, what would you tell yourself knowing how it's worked out now?
Oh, like a few things. One, try not to be so dramatic. I laugh now that I'm out of it, but I was so miserable. It's funny because like I didn't run. I played 1 year of soccer in high school and I was horrible. Like ew, running and kicking a ball at the same time, so bad. But once I found running, I was just like, wow, I love this. Um, but it's not like I identified as a runner. It still felt though that like that part of me was missing
Mm,
and I didn't know what to do without it. And so I was so cranky and just self-loathing and miserable. So one, I would say, hey, there is more to life than running, but trust the process and be patient. And patience is not one of my strong suits. Whose is it? Um, but my favorite quote ever, I'm opening my phone real quick to read it to you, is not on my phone where I saved it. Hang on. Um, the two most powerful warriors are patience and time by Leo Tolstoy. And I know history. I used that quote for a year after my back injury when I ran my longest run in over a year. It was like 7 miles. And I was just like, wow, this 1 year ago on this day, I couldn't even walk.
mm,
And I just ran 7 miles. And it was at the lake in New York. And it was just magical. And I know that everything takes time and it still is like hard to be patient,
mm,
but when it does finally pay off, like it's worth it. So I would really trust the process and just be patient.
mm. You have outquoted me, I believe, 3-0 right now, which is unheard of on this
I was
podcast.
prepared. I was prepared. I have so many quotes though that I love, and I'm like, I got to come ready for Joe because he's my quote guy. So
All right, I'll throw in a quote then, a history quote. So this is from Woodrow Wilson, who said, "The man who is swimming against the stream knows the strength of it." And I think sometimes it's really hard to relate to other people's hard, right? It's really hard to look from the outside in and understand what somebody else is going through. But I think by going through something like your back injury, the loss of your mom, etc., you've come to understand not only the resistance that life can put in front of you, but the strength that lies within you. And it's only against the resistance that we can build the resilience. And it sounds in so many different ways that you've come out on the other side of both of the things we've spoken about as a better version of yourself, as a version of yourself that loves yourself a whole lot more than you did maybe 5 or so years ago. And I would love to hear just a little bit more about that piece, about not only the strength but the self-love, because that is such a hard thing for so many people, and I don't think there's one way to go about it.
I think I find in general, like after my mom died, I'm not saying I was a mean person, but I find myself just like a little bit more nicer and compassionate and just I actually do think I'm a little bit more patient with things. Like maybe if I'm in line at the grocery store and someone in front of me is taking a little bit longer, I'm just like, where do I have to be? Like everyone's going through something. So maybe this is like this person's first time out checking out groceries in a few months. Like you don't know what anyone else is going through. And because I actually like didn't not a lot of people knew about my mom. So like I didn't talk about people. So when it happened, they were like, wait, I had no clue that she was sick. Like some of my friends from high school were like, I would have come and I'm like, I didn't tell anyone. Like I didn't want to talk about it. Um, so you don't know what people are going through. The self-love though, I think not being able like I still struggle with, like body image and whatnot, like, but not being able to do something that I loved, coming back and being able to do it. Like in the past, I was so critical of myself. Like I would get so mad if I didn't PR or hit a time that I needed to in running. And coming back when I didn't have it and wasn't able to actually do it, I truly look at everything now as a gift. And even like I tried some clothes on this past week and I was like, ooh, not a good week to try clothes on when you just carbo loaded for an ultra. And then I was like, wait, I get to eat this because I get to run 31 miles. This is a gift. So like take the hate down towards your body, look at what your body gets to do. And it's like changing your language to what you get to do that gives you a whole lot of more love and compassion towards yourself. Like, we get to do this. I don't have to do this. I get to. And that has just shifted everything for me.
I love that. Language is so important. The words we use hold so much power, not only to other people and not only spoken or written, but even words we think. And that can be a really things slip through the cracks if we're not careful, and we can fall into these patterns of negative self-talk. And so I think this is a great reminder. Before we move on and we'll continue this theme of conversation, I do want to interject a quick story that I think has some humor in it. And I don't know if you remember this or if you ever thought of it, but I did. So last year, May 20th, on my birthday, it was the Dirty German. And I had a client running, Jess, and Frank, actually, Jess and Frank. So I went to go see them, and you were there as well, and I got to see you. Do you know where I'm going with this?
I have a few things. Maybe the fact that it was your birthday, or no?
No, that wasn't the funny part. I'll support the people that I care about no matter what. Doesn't matter what day it is. But the funny part was I brought Theo, our dog, and he was very much still a puppy, and it was muddy out. And we saw you, and you had this like bright, beautiful, clean, fresh, right out of the box outfit on, and he jumped on you and got a muddy paw print on your outfit. And I don't know if you ever even thought of it, but I did. I was like, oh no, Cait definitely wanted to look like a certain way. And now she's got a dog paw print on her for this race. Did you ever think about that?
Well, the funnier part is that the like 20 minutes in, I'm covered in mud anyway because it downpoured for like 5 hours that day. So I was like, where's this? Where did the paw print go? Because I'm covered in mud. Um, but no, I didn't mind that. He's cute.
Good.
It was a little good luck. Good
Yeah,
luck. High five.
yeah, he is cute. We still need to work on the jumping, but with that being said, so I will usually ask people, what's the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose, and why have you done that thing? And we might have talked about that already. I don't know, but what would your answer to that question be?
Um, well, I think continuing to run, um, after my mom died, it's a mix of like I needed it, but also I ran the Philly Marathon a month and 4 days after she died. And I was just saying this to my husband. I don't know why I thought it was going to be easy. And I don't mean easy, like a marathon's never easy, but I had higher expectations for it. Like I continued to run after she died. Like I hit my runs. They weren't great, but I just figured it was a mix of life. But I kept running. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog coughing, by the way, but he's okay. Anyway, I it was just horrible. I think I like fell apart mile 15 on, and that's just such a very long time to be miserable in a marathon. And I know I didn't have to do it. I know I could have like deferred. No one would have faulted me. Everyone would have understood. And it's not like I did it because of that. I truly thought I could. But it was really hard. And it took me until mile 21 to like really get my head right, which is also a very long time to be negative self-talking to yourself. And finally at mile 21, I was like, hey, this run is not for you at this point. It is for your mom. Get it done. It's a gift. How many times have I said that? But like, get it done and it's okay. Like, it's clearly not your day. This is still why we love running.
Mm.
Nothing is ever guaranteed. So just get through it. And I actually I always think I'm going to cry so hard at the end of a run just because of how far I've come. And I usually don't, but that day I've like hit the finish line and like Anj was there and I just like don't hug people, but I like fell into her just collapsing, crying because I was just overwhelmed with like, wow, I did that. That was really hard. That was the hardest thing I've done. I saw my coach heading into Maniac and I said, this is harder than the Dirty German. Like, why is this harder than more miles? And she's like, I believe you, it's a road marathon. Like it's not gonna be good. I'm like, this is so hard. And but it got done, you know? And that's all. That's all that mattered that day, that it got done.
As some people would call that endurance. And this is the Project Endure podcast. So when you think of the word endurance, when you think of those moments, or even just the grieving process, or things that are challenging that we need to continue to move forward through, what comes to mind when you think of that word, endurance?
Should I hit you with another quote?
Yes, please.
It's I don't have the actual specific quote, but it's Martin Luther King where, you know, like run, walk, crawl, whatever you need to do, just keep moving
Mm,
forward. And so that's how I feel.
mm,
One foot in front of the other. Um, I said it on my story, like your dreams can take as long as they need to, as long as you don't give up on them and that you make sure that they happen.
mm,
So my dream from 2018 finally just happened. Yeah, a little bit longer than I intended it to, but I checked it off from my list and it felt good. And I still have like one more dream from like that year that I haven't done that I need to get done. And I'm so scared and superstitious, but like it can take as long as it needs to.
Will the superstition keep you from sharing that on the podcast?
Oh God, I'm trying not to be superstitious. So it is the Chicago Marathon, which I have, that's what I was signed up for in 2019 when I like injured my back. And then when I thought things were going well, I deferred for the next year, but I wasn't ready yet. So I'm like 0 for 2 with Chicago. People bring it up and I'm like, don't say the C word. Don't want to hear it. And my husband, after I forget what I did, but he was like, you know what this means. And I'm like, what? He's like, you gotta do Chicago. Like you have to get it done. And I'm just like, I'm not ready yet, but baby.
Mm. All right. I've got two quotes for you, and then we'll steer this toward the final question. So, the first quote is a quote that I came across just this week. It's from Raymond Joseph Teller, who said, sometimes magic is just someone spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. The second quote is from Jacob Reese, and I've read this before on the podcast, but he said, when nothing seems to help, I go and look at the stonecutter, hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet, at the 101st blow, it will split in two, and I know it was not that blow that did it, but all that had gone before. And to me, both of those quotes express how beautiful persistence is, right? When somebody refuses to give up on something, even when they're hammering away at it 100 times and nothing happens, they hit it the 101st and it cracks in two. When people see magic, an overnight success, something that seemed impossible for someone happen, it's not because of magic. It's because that person showed up time and time again, maybe more than other people thought was even reasonable, but for that person, it was important and that created the magic. So I see that in you, Cait, and I have no doubt that Chicago will happen. I'm just excited to see when it does.
I'm also like really stubborn and I've had people it's horrible to say, but I had people literally be like, you should just give up. Like, why are you even still trying to run through this? I know they're not in my life anymore. However,
Mm,
what a horrible thing to say to someone. But also at the same time, it inspired me more to be like, no, I'm definitely going to overcome this. Like, I don't give up easily. So if you tell me I can't do something, I'm even more determined to be able to
mm.
do it.
I'm the same way. When is your birthday, by the way?
December 22nd,
Okay. What is
Capricorn.
okay? Are Capricorn stubborn? Is that
Yeah. And it's like, you know, we know best, my way or the highway. I could go on and on, but yeah, no, very stubborn and hardworking. I love it.
mm. I'm a Taurus, so I'm stubborn as
Oh, I
well.
know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We've talked about signs.
Yeah. So we're both earth signs. We are very committed to what we do.
Absolutely. So the other thing I'll say about that is it's always sad when other people tell other people that they can't do things, right? One, it doesn't make sense to me. I couldn't ever see myself saying that to someone else about something that they care about. So it's hard for me to imagine others doing that. However, I would say more often than not, when people tell someone you can't do this, it's because they themselves don't think it would be possible for them. And it's that self imposed limit that they are putting on someone else. And it can feel really crappy. And sometimes that means that person shouldn't be part of our lives anymore. And sometimes we can use that as fuel to prove those people wrong. And that's what you're doing.
I love proving people wrong.
Yeah. Well, I believe in you. So you prove me right, prove them wrong, make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, of course. So, with that being said, Cait, my final and favorite question of the podcast. There are people listening to this going through all sorts of things. Some people are going through loss and the grieving process. Some people might have an injury that's keeping them from doing something they love. Some people might just be going through the ups and downs of life and having some tough days. If you had however long you want to say whatever you want to those people who are struggling right now, what would you say?
One of my favorite things that I actually wrote, which seems very confident of me to say, but it's about being injured, is, let's see, to injured runners or athletes out there, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's hard to see it, and my closest friends, your closest friends, will tell you that I didn't always believe them. On your best days, it'll shine bright, and on the painful days, it's really dim. But if you work hard, you'll get through it.
Mm,
And I think the last part, like if you work hard, you'll get through it, is applicable to running towards grief. And like with grief or loss or just being sad some days, like meet yourself where you're at and feel it. Like it's weird to say that it's a blessing, but it's like it is a blessing to be able to feel things on different levels. And maybe you're running and you can equate it to that, or maybe like it's like lifting and it's just everything you can do an analogy, a metaphor for everything, but feel it. Um, find a way to process your thoughts and like have some type of outlet. So for me, that is running, and that's where I go to write. Like I take out my phone and I like type a thought, and then it comes into like my Instagram post. But that's where I go to like create. So find something where you can just let it out and know that like everything's temporary, so it will pass. Um, but just enjoy. Like you can't have your happy days without the sad days, and it makes your happy days happier. Um, and just like it's all a gift,
it's all a gift.
to like feel this way about someone or something that you miss. Like it's a privilege to miss them.
Mm. I have my title for the episode. It's a gift.
I
It's
know I was thinking like, what's my episode title going to be? I have no clue, but it's a gift.
mm. So, I mean, Cait, if people want to follow along, if they want to reach out and thank you for something you said that impacted them, if they want to see whenever it is that you run Chicago, where should people go to kind of stay up to date?
You can come to me on my Instagram, which you'll tag me in, but also I like to anyone going through anything, I'm not like your certified grief therapist, but I made a joke the other day that I feel like I am because I don't know, I just like I've said a few things and people are like, wow, that really resonated with me. So like if you need an ear
Mm.
and you need someone to just listen and not give you a solution because there is no solution, I'm your person. I can listen to you whether you have an injury or not. You just like lost something that you had. I feel like I've been through it all. So I'm here to listen and just listen. Like I don't have to talk, but you can put my Instagram up.
And I 100% will. And I would encourage anyone listening who even feels just the tiniest inkling to reach out to Cait about anything to do it. You won't regret it. I'm grateful to have you in my life, Cait. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation. And over the past 2 years or so, I now understand why this was the right time to have our podcast. And I'm so grateful for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being patient.
Anytime. If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.